So I'm going to show you how to wallpaper around a window. So this could be like a door as well. So it's a window which basically have a reveal which goes in. So I'm going to show you how to do that. So to start off with, what's really important is you need to measure the width of the window, and you need to find the center point. So this is the center point. In fact, this was actually done by the previous wallpaper man, so he actually did it correctly. And that was his mark for the center. So you need to make the center of the window there, and then we need to bring it across 52 centimeters, which is the width of the wallpaper. So you can see that, 52 centimeters. So it means that the pattern looks symmetrical around the window. So that's why we do that. And then the next thing we need to do, this line was again made by because there was wallpaper on this wall before, which I stripped off. And this is what he put in. So this is a plumb line across here. So I've got two things. I've got this, which is a laser printer thing, not printer, what am I talking about? A laser level, which I've never used before. But anyway, you switch it on at the side and then the laser comes up like this, which is quite good. And you can see that it makes it really level, and you can see the green laser line. And then what you can do is you can mark it off with a pencil. You can make little marks so you know that that's where you need to go with your wallpaper. So we're going to start this edge. So this needs to be really straight before we start doing any wallpapering. So very important. If you haven't got one of these, which I never had before, so I always used to do, I'll switch it off. I can switch it off. There we are. This is just an ordinary spirit level. So you can do the same thing, but with the spirit level. So you just look for the bubble in the middle and go for the straight edge and just put it against the wall. And then you watch the bubble. You might have to come a bit closer to have a look at the bubble. If you see here, the bubble has to be in the middle. So you can go, that's not straight, that's not straight. So you can go along and then you can put a pencil mark, like you can draw a pencil mark along the line, and that's another way of doing it as well. So that's how we get started, the actual line that we need. So now what I'm going to do is I'll put my laser level on because I haven't used it. It's quite fun using this, it's quite interesting. So I've got that on my line. So that's straight, I think that's straight. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to measure the wall, because I'm going to cut a piece of wallpaper so it's going to fit this bit of the wall here, because I'm actually going to be wallpapering the ceiling, but that I'm going to do that in another video, and I'm going to show how I do that. But I'm only going to wallpaper up to here, but I'm going to put another layer of wallpaper coming down later. So I'm just going to do this section. So what I want to do is I want to measure the wall. So I'm going to measure the wall, and that says 130 centimeters. So I want to add on a bit more for my sort of top and bottom excess. That's 130. So if I do say 140 to 145, I should have enough at the top and the bottom. So what I'm going to do now is use my tape measure and go onto my table. And then I'm going to have my roll of wallpaper. And then I'm going to, the top of my wallpaper is always going to be a straight edge. And it's really important that you keep that straight edge, because if you start going off on a different thing, then you get yourself into a bit of a state. So I'm going to unroll the wallpaper down to my 140 centimeters mark. My 140 marks, I put like a pencil mark at the end there. And then I've got two things which I use. I've got this, which is actually sort of a quilting square, which I've got. Or I could use this, which is a set square. And it means that you know that you're always going to have a really good square edge when you cut the wallpaper. So I'm going to use this one just because I'm used to using it. And I'm going to just make sure it's really sort of square on. And then I'm going to just use my pencil. I'm actually going to draw across the wallpaper. So I've got a line there. And then I'm going to cut the wallpaper across like that. And this is going to be my first sheet. Okay, so that's my first sheet of wallpapers. I put this wallpaper away somewhere. And then what I'm going to do is get rid of the tape measure. Actually, it's quite a good idea to know how, if you want to know how big your pattern repeat is, it's quite good. You can tell by looking at the pattern. So say, for instance, this pink flower here, if I find the top of the pink flower and then I measure down to the same thing at the bottom, that gives me a pattern repeat. So I can measure that, and the pattern repeat is 52 centimeters. So that's quite good measurement to know, 52 centimeters, when you're doing the next long lengths, because I usually count, it's a bit like making curtains. I count the pattern repeats I need for the length of the wallpaper when I'm cutting the wallpaper. But that's just me. And I just have to tell you this, by the way, I'm not a professional wallpaper hanger. I've just learned from YouTube videos and doing it. So, and actually watching, because I've had to get proper wallpaper people in and I've had to watch them do it, and I've picked up a few tips, just being quite good. But the thing is that they cost quite a lot of money to get a wallpaper hanger in. And I always wanted to be able to get the wallpaper hung when I wanted to get it done. I couldn't wait months for them to come. So that's why I had to learn how to wallpaper. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to roll this wallpaper, because the thing about this wallpaper is it's actually paste the wall wallpaper. So it means we don't have to paste the actual wallpaper anymore. Because in the old days, wallpaper was made out of paper and you had to wait for it to soak. So you put the wallpaper paste on and then you had to wait for the soaking time before you could use it. But now you don't have to do that. And actually you can just paste the wall, which we're going to do now. So I've just put my wallpaper, rolled it the other way around. So it means that I can, it's going to be flatter when I put it on the wall. And I'll just put like my scissors on there just to weight it down a bit. And then the next phase is we're going to start pasting the wall. So now I'm literally going to start pasting the wall. So I get my roller as if I'm painting, and I literally just roll it on. And I've got a little brush to do the sort of any fiddly bits, but I literally just, all I'm doing is I'm going to roll on the wallpaper as and when per sheet. So I'm not going to worry about trying to wallpaper paste the whole wall. I'm just going to do literally where I want it to go. So I'm doing that, and then I've actually got a little brush here because we need to brush down the edges because we're going to be coming around the corner. So don't worry about getting paste on other surfaces because we're going to wipe that all off when we get to this bit. So I'm just going to paint this on, being quite liberal with it. And we can just wipe off the excess when we get to that stage. Okay, right, now we're going to put the wallpaper up. So we're going to start putting this first roll up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my line. This is my main line, which I'm going to use to start off with. And I'm going to start putting the wallpaper up against it. So I've got a little bit of excess at the top, and I'm going to use my line you don't want to have too much excess at the top, otherwise it all ends up folding over onto itself. And then I'm literally just going to roll it down using my line as my guide, and I'm just smoothing it with my hand first, just to sort of start getting it going. It's quite thick, this wallpaper, so it's amazing you don't get any bubbles or anything. So I'm literally going to pull that down like this on my line. And there we are. So I've got that. And then the next thing I need to do is I can just smooth it out. And I can use my scraper, which I need to get, which I don't know where it is at the moment. Here it is. Here's my scraper. So I can use my scraper and scrape it up like that. And it's very important to make sure that this line is straight. so we can just do a quick test with the laser just before we start cutting anything. We can just see, is that going to be straight? Which I think it is straight. It's looking good. So that's okay. So we're all right on the straight factor. And then what we need to do is I'm going to cut off the top layers, and then we're going to try and see, this is the area which is the tricky bit. So I'm going to show you what we do for this bit here. And then I'm going to cut this bottom bit down here. So this is a really useful tool because it's actually the width of the wallpaper. So what I'm going to do is push it quite well into it. And then the secret with these knives is to have a really long extended knife like that, because the secret of wallpapering is having a really sharp knife. And the good thing about this wallpaper is it cuts really well because it's always dry. So I'm going to put it at an angle, and I'm going to get my knife and I'm going to push quite hard, and I'm going to cut along the bottom of this bit of wallpaper here. And then I'm going to lift that off, and then like magic, there we are, it comes straight off. And then I'm going to put this down like that. So that's ready for the next stage that we're going to be doing. Here I'm going to, we're going to cut the wallpaper. We're going to make like a bow cut along here, because sometimes these reveals are not actually straight. So this helps cover up the unstraightness. So that's why we have to cut it. But what I need to do is I need to find where the corner of the window, the reveal is. So I'm just going to use my pencil and cut there like that. And then what I can do is I can actually use my pencil and then draw back down to that, because we're actually going to be getting rid of this. So what I can do is I can pull it off and get my scissor, get my knife, and just cut along down to the mark. And there we are. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring this in. I'm going to start pushing it around the corner. In fact, I've probably got too much wallpaper here. So what I can do is I can push it down roughly, and then we can cut this off. So I'll say cut through the sort of end of the pink flower. So I'm going to cut this up just to get rid of the excess, and it just makes it easier to deal with. So then what I'm going to do is I'm going to push it in as much as possible. So I'm going to pull it down and then pull it round. And then what we'll do is we'll do the same thing for here. I'm going to put like a hole, I'm going to put a little dot where I wanted to put and then I'm going to cut underneath. And then that will help turn the corner like this, so we can bring it through. And then we need to sort of, in fact, what you can do is another little bit of cut to help it go around the corners. You can just cut that there and cut it there a bit, so it's a bit more, a bit more. And then we're going to push it in round, keep pushing it round tightly and pinch it with your fingers. Because it's quite thick wallpaper. So you need to sort of, and then you can sort of do this as well with this scrapey thing, is you can sort of pull it round like that. And then what we're going to do is we're going to cut. So get your pencil mark and then push your pencil in there. So you've got like a little line of where you want it to go. And then we're going to pull it out. And then we're just going to cut that excess off, little corner bit off. Then we can do the same thing for here as well. find the sort of where it is. I think that's about there. And then what I sometimes do is I sort of cut a bit off like that, and then I can sort of see what I'm doing. And then what we can do is we can start cutting all the way around here. So I'm just going to leave this top bit because I need to have a bit of excess in case we have a problem with the next stage. So then what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my cutting, but I might have to get my, no, I'll use this, it's okay. So again, I'm going to put my knife in like that and cut. Hang on, I'll just do this here. I'm just going to cut that off like that there. And you can see that I pushed it in, and then I'm going to cut down here. I have actually made a bit of a mistake down here, but that's not the end of the world, and I'll show you how I'm going to mend that mistake. So don't worry if you do make a mistake. I've got a really good way of... So again, I'm going to start at the top, and I'm going to go down with my tool like this. This is when you need a really sharp knife, it's really important. And then pull that off there. And then we'll just clip that bit. And I've just kept this so far at the top at the moment. And then sometimes you need to pull it a bit more and just use the scissors just to get the extreme bits. And then we push that in there like that. And this is the reveal here. So that's the first bit of wallpaper that we need to do here. And then we have to we're going to splice another piece of wallpaper to go underneath here. And then we can put the next bit of wallpaper along. So that's the next phase. I've actually made a mistake here. It's very easy to make a mistake, but I'm going to show how I can get out of my mistake. So don't worry if you make a mistake. This is a really good way of helping you not rectify it. So what I'm doing here is I'm going to paste over the wallpaper here. So I'm going to paste it across because I've cut off too much at the end. So I haven't got my edge of my wallpaper effectively. So what I've done is I'm just going to paste that, and then what I've done here is I've cut a piece of the wallpaper which is going to match the pattern, and I'm going to put it over the wallpaper. So it's really easy. I just have to match the pattern on top. So you can see that I'm going to make it so it fits on and as if it's going over like that. And then I'm going to bring it down again because I basically cut all the end off. So I just use my scrapey tool here again, and I'm going to cut it again. So remember to press hard. You need to change your blades quite a lot because they get blunt very quickly. Pull that off there. And I want to do this bit. Now this window is a bit odd because it hasn't got a windowsill. So I'm just going to get my pencil, which I don't know where it's gone now. Oh, here it is. Get my pencil, and I can just put a little dot where I want to cut it. So I'm just going to cut it. Which way am I going to do it? I'm going to cut it going diagonally up like that. So I'm going to cut that across. So I'll just get my knife and just cut it like that. And then this bit here I'm going to fold over. And then what I'm going to do here is I'm going to do a thing called a splice technique. So what I'm doing here is I'm actually going to cut through both layers of the wallpaper, but I'm going to, because it's basically going to hide it. But if you watch me, then I'll show you. So you have to press quite hard, and then I'm going to sort of do a wiggly line, or go, you can go with the pattern, but I can't really do that with here. So I'm literally going to cut across like that. Then I'm going to take the top bit off, like that. I've taken the excess off, and then underneath I've got some other wallpaper. So I need to take this off as well. Hang on, this has not really worked. Hang on a sec, I think I've pressed hard enough through. So I'm just going to do that again. So I'm going to put that on. So you have to press quite hard. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do it again, but I'm going to do a different wiggly line. So I'm going to press really hard. So I'm going through both bits of the wallpaper. So take that off again, and then we'll take this bit off. And then underneath, you'll be able to take this excess bit off. Just need to cut that off a bit. That's it, we'll get rid of that. Hang on. This is really showing you how to do a mistake, but take this underneath bit out, and then what we're going to do is we're going to match it up so that it goes, so it's literally just like one layer of wallpaper again. And you won't be able to tell, so what you just move it along so it sort of, and when it dries you won't be able to notice it. And what you can do is put a bit more paste on if you're not sure, just so it's really well put on. And then you can see, and you won't be able to see where that is, honestly, when you all wallpapers up. It's a bit like having a seam across, like you have a seam coming down. This is like a seam going across, and you can see that it's not going to stick out because it's just one layer of wallpaper. And then I'll cut this off, and then then that's the end of the mistake. So I'm going to just wipe off any excess glue, and then you wouldn't even know that was a mistake. So I'm going to do the top bit now, which is similar to what I've just done there, to show you again how it works. So reveal here. So I'm going to add on a similar bit that I did from the mistake which I did. I'm going to do a similar idea here. So what I did was I've made a piece of wallpaper to match where I wanted to go again, to match the pattern, and I've sort of cut off the excess already on the side. So I just measured from, say, the top of the flower underneath, and then I've made a big enough piece. So again, I've got to do the wallpapering. I mean, I've got to do not wallpapering, the pasting. So I'm going to paste quite liberally over this bit here. I mean, the good thing about sort of pattern wallpaper is that it hides a multitude of sins, and it is easy to make a mistake, but it's not difficult to rectify it. So don't worry if you're... I always find I've watched wallpapers, strip wallpaper off from professional wallpapers, and I found so many mistakes that they've made, and they've hidden them. So I wouldn't worry about making a mistake. So what we're going to do here is I'm going to position the wallpaper over the pattern so it matches it exactly. So I can see that it's on there like that. So it's sticking on the top of it. Okay, and then I'm going to find the little hole. So I can just use my pencil, and then I'm just going to cut across just so it makes it easier to go underneath. Okay, just cut that bit off there like that. And then we'll bring that underneath there. And sometimes if it's not straight underneath the reveal, or it's a bit big reveal, then you might find it's quite good to have a bit of overlap under here, and then you've got a bit of room to manoeuvre. Whereas if you've cut this bottom bit off and there's not enough on here to go over it, then it looks, you've got like a little tiny gap, and it looks awful. So, I mean, this is quite a small reveal, this, so it's a bit trickier, but if you've got a bigger reveal, then it's much easier. So what you can do, one tip I picked up from a decorator was just to get your pencil and just do a sort of faint line across like that, and then go along here and just do a faint line across there, and then you know that's your cutting mark, and then you just pull it out and you can see the pencil line. So if you cut along there, because sometimes it's difficult to get into areas with the knife, so sometimes you have to use your scissors. And then you cut that there, and then we can cut up here as well. And that we bring it along there like that. And we can just use the scrapey tool to push it in. So that's worked really well. And then you can see I've got to do the splice technique again, which I hope is a bit easier to show you here. So that's good. So that they haven't got a horrible gap there now. So that looks nice and neat in there. Then we've got to do the splice technique. But sometimes I just check to see. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just check how far I've got to go, so I can go anywhere I want really. So I can just do the wiggly line across. So I'm going to do it about here. Press really hard, like really hard. Do the wiggly line. You can, some people use the pattern to go around, but I can't really do that on here. And then I'm going to go the wiggly line down to that corner. I'm trying to press really hard, but it is quite, you do need to have a seriously good sharp knife. Take that top bit off, and then what you need to do is pull this bit down here, and we're going to take the underneath bit away. This is where we've got to sort of be careful where we cut. So I might have to use my scissors to carefully cut it. Sometimes it's a bit like doing surgery, doing wallpapering, but it all comes out on the end. And there we are. Then I put it back in, and you can see that it fits on really well. And that is it. So we've got the reveal right underneath here, because we couldn't just get one bit of wallpaper and just push it in and push it in. It wouldn't have worked. So that's how you do a reveal. And then what we can do is get our sponge and just give that a quick wipe over. And then we finish doing that. And then we can do the same thing on the other side.